All right, fantastic. So I can see pretty much everyone we are expecting have already joined. We have over 200 people with us now on the line, and quite excited to talk to you guys today. So as you know, if you haven't joined one of the previous versions, you can see there's a question function. So you can write your questions there. We will try to take as many questions as we can. If we can't get to your question, we will answer it after the session. We will just drop you a quick note to be able to help you with that. And as I mentioned also in the previous sessions, we are all connecting from our homes, so the internet is not always perfect. If we have any technical difficulties, just bear with us. We will definitely come back. Now, as we talked about at the very beginning, today we are going to look into how different consumer segments are returning back to work and back to their public life and entertainment, right? And in some countries like UK, where we are currently based, we've been seeing restrictions being lifted gradually, and not the restaurants and the pubs and bars are not open yet, but people are indeed spending a lot of time outside. So, for example, we all seen a lot of pictures from the beaches, having a very hot spring here in the UK. People are actually starting to feel more comfortable going down to beaches and spend time there as well. Now, before we go into what are the areas that people are really cannot wait to go back to and they are rushing back to it, we also wanted to talk a little bit about the change in the mood and the impact of the mood in our purchase decisions and in our consumption decisions as well. Now, as some of you are familiar, what we are seeing here is the dominant mood in the country, and this is in real time, right? So it shows the data for a whole week up until an hour ago. And the color basically shows us what the dominant mood is. Now, to begin with, I just want to jog our memories and go to about 1 year ago and how the things looked then. And what you see in those scenarios is that it actually changes time to time from, you know, as we go through the different time frames, how quickly the dominant mood changes. So if we actually looked at like 2018 average, for example, we would see that most countries would be showing a content picture. So this bright, nice color here means that people are content and upbeat and feeling good about their lives, which should be the dominant mood. In general, as humans, we are, you know, slightly positive about neutral, and that must be the dominant mood in the country. However, what we've seen is that over the last period, first of all, we've seen anxiety really taking over. So this is the end of the March period, and you can see a lot of countries are in a state of anxiety. And the blue shows basically the percentage of people who are feeling very anxious and stressed in that country, right? So for example, you can see here for Turkey it's 23%, and for United States it's 20%, and we can see in the UK it's also 23%. That is very abnormal, right? In a given time, it will be less than 10%, 5 to 10% for the part of the population who are feeling really stressed. It might be due to you are changing jobs, it might be because you are unemployed, but we don't, of course, live our lives in a completely, you know, continuous state of anxiety. So this was quite a breakthrough in terms of what the public dominant mood is like. And then if you actually come back to this week, this is really good news that the countries are starting to change. Like last week, we've still seen some countries moving, first of all, from anxiety to more of a state of boredom. And boredom, of course, is still a negative feeling. And you can see that 12% here in this case, for example, in Turkey was bored rather than feeling anxious. It moved into boredom. Somewhere like Ethiopia, we see the similar result. And some places like Ghana, we were seeing people more feeling actually sad and depressed about the situation in the world rather than feeling anxious. And in the week that we are in, we're seeing increasing number of people actually moving into a neutral state of mind. And what that means is obviously is that the way that we behave changes significantly based on our mood, right? And when we are in a survival mood, what that means is very high levels of cortisol in our blood. It leads to savory snacking cravings, and it also leads to a survival mode in our mind that we only buy things, or we are only interested in doing things that are really important for our survival. Only when we come back to a normal, neutral or content mindset, then we can go back to a little bit more a range of emotions, which is very important for marketeers and brands to be able to speak to. So before we go into a bit more details about the mood, Vidisha, shall we start maybe just looking at how people are feeling about going back to work, going back to commuting? If you want to take over the screen.
Yes, absolutely. Just doing that now. Great. So what we see is that, you know, we saw that we start with working and commuting, but firstly, we see that people who are employed full time, you know, almost half of them in the UK have actually been told to work remotely. And as part of that, you know, there's a big shift towards people sort of becoming accustomed to sort of a different environment. Now, it's worked for some, you know, but it hasn't worked for others. But when we do ask people around how they feel about returning to work, even when it's safe to do so, we see sort of 4 in 5 actually preferring to continue working from home or working remotely because they don't want to take any health risks. Now, I think this is partly driven by fear of being around other people, fear of obviously having to commute, which we're coming on to. But a part of it we've learned as well is around people learning that being and working from home isn't that bad, that productivity levels can actually be higher, and that they're actually managed to collaborate with their teams, with other people in their office very well. I mean, we've been working from home for some time now, and we found that it is doable. And I think that other people are also seeing that. So it's a mix of the fact that people are sort of feeling afraid, but also that they found a new normal way of working that they're actually finding to be better for them. So it's quite interesting. Moving on to commuting though, which is obviously intrinsically linked with working, so particularly in markets like UK and other markets, we see that there is still some fear of people avoiding public transport. So we see that, you know, one in sort of 3 people, 1 in 4 people are saying that they're going to continue avoiding public transport for the time being, even if their governments say it's safe to use again. And even if they do start using it, they'll need reassurances that relevant precautions are being taken. Now, if we look at some of the forms of transport as well, buses and trains appear to be, as well as taxis, appear to be sort of more appealing. Interestingly, excluding the taxi, of course, which is obviously a more personalized service, buses and trains will experiencing overcrowding during peak hours. Yet, you know, because trains and buses are overground, they are actually viewed to be safer. So this consumer perception is going to be really key, as being out, having a bit more of that outdoor air, outside space, actually links it to them feeling that it's safer, even though it could be just as crowded as the underground.
And just to maybe give some benchmarks here, when you look at something like the metro or underground in a city like London, for example, you usually see about 70% or so of people actually using the metro to be able to commute. So a drop from 70% to 20% would mean that about half of the city population will either refuse to go to work because they just won't be able to get there, or they will have to walk, or they will have to take bikes or scooters. So this is going to be a very fundamental change. And we are also going to be talking a little bit about what's the impact of that in impulse purchases and the convenience channels, because obviously many people also grab a lot of the impulse products as they are on their way. And we have these like kiosks and stores that are, you know, positioned very close to the tube stations, the metro stations, metro stops. So it's going to be quite interesting as people are finding new ways of going to work and coming back from work. How does the whole convenience channel reshape itself?
Yeah, absolutely. And as well as sort of channels, you have to think about advertising as well. You know, out-of-home advertising, we see a lot of it in sort of underground stations, in metro stations. and all around on the trains, in the stations. And I think, again, how is that going to affect it? If people are refusing to or reluctant to use those modes of transport, what does that mean for out-of-home advertising spend? Does it need to move more towards other forms of transport? Does it need to move more towards like actually outdoor posters? And so it'd be quite interesting to see what that all means for the world of advertising as well. As I think what would be interesting now to move on to is just to remind ourselves a little bit before we dive into how people's sort of venue and activities might change. We just need to remind ourselves like what we saw during lockdown and return to our sort of human impact tracker. So during the pandemic, we saw a lot of new habits emerging as consumers were forced to stay at home. They developed new routines, and not just new routines, but new skills. And also circumstances changed. There was a degree of economic uncertainty. People sort of lost their jobs, facing financial challenges. So that, it wasn't just a shift that was sort of built based on being sort of kept at home, but also because of their sort of financial situation. So I'm just going to go back to our HIT dashboard and start looking at some of these factors. I want to start firstly with like germs, because we saw globally an increase in people's attention and concern around germs. You can see on these charts, 1 in 2 are thinking about them regularly, 1 in 2 are extremely concerned, and we've seen this increase over time as well. This has sort of led to what we've seen, and many of you will be familiar with, is a heightened sort of awareness around poor personal hygiene and unclean surfaces, leading or they're believed to cause germs to spread, particularly when it comes to sort of COVID-19. Of course, we know this has led to more frequent and longer hand washing, increased use of hand sanitizers, and more frequent and thorough home cleaning. So the reason I'm sort of mentioning all of this again is because it's really important to bear this in mind as we look at people returning to out of home. So if I move on to sort of like food in specifically now, because one of the areas we're going to look at is eating out of home, we see that, over half of the consumers have changed their food and beverage sort of habits, with biggest changes being around eating more healthily and home cooking. Now, this is because we've seen people lean towards immunity boosting measures and also more home cooking as they're not able to eat out, and also concerned about hygiene standards when they do order from a takeaway and delivery. And we see that, like 7 in 10 people are claiming that they will continue with these new habits they formed, which are prominently around the healthy eating and home cooking. This is really key because it is not to say people won't go back to out of home, but it does look at what people will sort of consider when they do go out of home. And what I want to touch on before as quickly as well is alcohol. Now, this is quite a divided category, actually. So we have seen a quarter of people change their habits. And around half of those people are saying they're drinking more, half are saying they're drinking less. We saw that the more people who are drinking more is actually due to boredom, but also as a measure to reduce stress and relax. And half are drinking less to sort of be healthier and save money. Again, we see people are saying that they are going to continue with these measures in alcohol, predominantly drinking less. But we also see people that are going to carry on drinking at home because they've actually learned about creating new drinks. It's interesting. I think it's important to have this context as we move into looking at what people have missed most during lockdown and what they are really looking forward to be able to do again. But not only what they're looking forward to, but what they'll feel comfortable doing. Tuche, do you want to provide some more detail on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Shall we just jump to the one that what people are, that's fantastic. So one of the things that we've been talking to our bees all over the world was about what are the things that they can't wait to go back for, right? And as you know, that's a conversation, not a multiple choice list. So we are just simply asking them, well, tell us, what did you miss the most? As soon as you are legally allowed, that's going to be the first thing that you do again. And I mean, some good news for the restaurants and the fast food sector, that the #1 in the list is going out to eat. Now, similar to alcohol, we are expecting to see, and we are already seeing the signals of a very divided response to this. And it's not just by age, but also in terms of like different perspectives about the future of COVID-19. We see more like fatalist groups where people are simply saying, well, I'm gonna catch the virus at some point, so I just want to go back to restaurants and I don't really care. And as well as we do see some groups where there's a very strong phobia from the germs, and then they are basically simply saying that no one can get me back inside a restaurant where there are strangers. I would rather do my own dinner parties at home to be able to see my friends and do entertainment. So it's going to be quite important not just to look at the percentages in terms of the overall, like what percentage is going to come back, but fully understand which group is actually coming back, because it's going to change from channel to channel. So if you look at something like QSR and fast food, we are going to see a lot more people returning back, younger groups, people who are feeling a bit more comfortable with the prospects of contacting the virus. Whereas in some other groups, like people who used to go to more into fine dining and the upper end of the scale, it's going to be a much slower bounce back is what we are going to see. Now, if we go down, we're going to come back to eating out and actually talk through some names. And I can remember definitely Nando's from the UK data, that people can't absolutely wait to have the Nando's back in their lives. But we will go through some other chains which are like the top of mind for consumers. But before we go into that, unsurprisingly, catching up with the family and friends is right after. It is a little bit interesting that it's not actually above eating out, but it is right after that. And people are obviously seeing immediate family, they are going into parks and stuff, and they're also you know, using Zoom like a lot of people are doing right now, but it is not quite giving them the same feeling of like connection. So that's one of the second things, the second thing we are seeing here to be able to go back to that. A really surprising one here that we did not expect to see, and that's exactly the reason why we don't use multiple choice options, is the cinemas. Because if you ask like anyone's opinion as a influencer or an expert, a lot of people would say that cinemas are already in a decline, and people are not really going as much as they used to. This is just going to accelerate that process. However, we are indeed seeing from people saying that they really miss being in a movie theater more so than watching live sports events, significantly more so. And it may be also because there are a lot more like private style, small movie theaters where people feel a bit more comfortable. You are just in a room with another 10, 15 people. Whereas when you go to a big sports event or a live concert, you're talking about thousands and thousands of people. And that's the reason you can see it. Vidisha, if you can see the percentage on it, it's less than 5%, isn't it? Watching live sports. Yeah. 6% exactly. Only 5-6% of the people are saying that they really miss watching live sports and planning to go back to it. So as we mentioned, we are not necessarily expecting a fast bounce back like a V-shaped curve in most of these sectors. Hairdressers are, for example, at the very bottom. Again, it's a place where hygiene is so important. If you're getting your hair or your nails done, obviously hygiene becomes a very important factor. And that's part of the reason it's bottom of the list for everyone. It will take a long time for people to return to salons. But good news for fast food and the QSR chains, actually people are feeling comfortable going back very soon. Speaking of fast food chains, Vidisha, can you tell us a little bit more about what kind of cuisines, what kind of restaurants that our bees cannot wait to go back to?
Yes, absolutely. So what we look at, so yeah, Tuche, you're absolutely right. So fast food restaurants, particularly chain ones, are top of the list. And actually specifically, we see mentions of McDonald's, KFC, Burger King as well. That's globally. But Nando's did most definitely appear in the top for UK. So people have really missed fast food restaurants. I think they're, very convenient. They have obviously sort of comfort foods that people love and crave. So that is something people are going back to. When we look at specific dishes as well, we see pizza is a key dish people are missing, which you think is surprising because it is available very easily on takeaway and delivery. But you have to remember that people were also reluctant to order takeaway or delivery, and pizza is quite difficult to cook at home. So that's why it's a top dish people want to come back to. And actually, when you think about what types of occasions people are most looking forward to as well, you see that you have spending time with immediate family and get-togethers with friends. Like, you'd kind of think that these are actually quite big groups. So it'll be interesting to see. These are not, your couple is down here, still high, but sort of you're going out with your partner or spouse is here. But otherwise, we see quite big group activities, which will be quite interesting for venues to cater to, because larger group sizes will pose a problem if social distancing measures need to be put in place. So I think that's quite an interesting one that restaurants will need to sort of bear in mind. So I think, Tuche, shall we move to what you think about from that, what people are actually expecting?
Absolutely. And before we go into that, there's a quick question from the audience as well about pubs and bars specifically. And they are asking that, how quickly people would be going back to pubs and bars, and, when would they expect to return to out-of-home drinking?
It's a good point. So we saw on alcohol that actually we saw that people are actually thinking that they're going to drink less overall. And if people are going to continue to drink, it seems to suggest that people are going to actually prefer drinking in the comfort of their own home. So I think that if I go back to the chart we were on, if I can just find it, if we look at which people are going to feel more comfortable doing once restrictions are lifted, you see that pub and bar is actually much lower down. It's over here. Much lower than restaurants, malls, cinemas and theatres, even salons.
That does make sense. And I mean, and we had another chart earlier about drinking as well. And this is always an interesting one, because pre-COVID-19, when you look at 2019, we were already seeing actually a decline in the younger generations not being recruited to the category with the same speed, and also lower levels of alcohol and zero alcohol becoming a big trend as well. So it's a little bit of a continuation of that. The response to COVID-19 from the alcohol consumption perspective is very divided. As Vidisha mentioned earlier, there are certain groups who are actually turning more to that as a, enjoy, not so much actually it's enjoyment, more like relaxation and boredom. And at the same time, the health concerns are really taking over in terms of what is our top of mind. Worries about diabetes and obesity becoming a very public topic right now. And we do see a group of consumers increasingly becoming more health conscious and thinking about cutting alcohol. And obviously that's why zero alcohol or low percentage alcohol products are going to be even more important than they were in 2019. And it's about 25% of people who are feeling comfortable at this stage going back to pubs and bars. It will take a while to build it up back to the overall population. Before we finish, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but one thing that we did want to talk about was what are the factors that consumers are expecting to see when they come in to eating out venues. So that could be a bar or pub, or it could be a restaurant or a fast food, a quick service chain. So what are some of those factors? Now, it's interesting that 1 in every 2 said that they do expect social distancing to be applied to the tables, and they prefer to sit outside rather than inside, wherever that's possible. But another factor is that they expect to see a lot fewer tables. And there are a lot of comments we've been seeing from our bees about not going to bars because of that, because once you're in the bar, it's a very crowded area, it's not like a table service, and it's very difficult to be able to distance yourself as a result of that. how the bars and clubs will shape up in the social distancing world. It's going to be a very interesting experience to see for all of us. Another factor they mentioned is that they expect staff to wear PE, right? And what we mean by that is like gloves and masks, right? And this is about 42-45%, is that right?
That is, yeah.
That we can see about 42%. Again, that means about half almost of the population, when they walk into a fast food restaurant, say, you know, grabbing something from McDonald's, or even like sitting down in a fine dining restaurant, they want to see their waiters and waitresses to be wearing gloves and masks. Now, the challenge is, this is going to be a really hard one, because there's another half who really feels uncomfortable with it, right? And you will need to see for your own audience group which is more dominant, and how these measures can be built into the atmosphere and the decoration of the environment without making people feel like they are just visiting, or they are just having a dinner in a, you know, surgical room in a hospital. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how we can start making people comfortable seeing their waiters coming in with wearing a mask and talking through a mask. How would they build a relationship? How would they build a rapport with their consumers on site? And how do we create a brand experience on site in a world where, you know, the food is being delivered to our table by people who are wearing masks and gloves? Another factor is about food hygiene. So they are expecting food hygiene certificates to be visible in the on-site, and also they expect hand sanitizers to be available at the beginning of the meal as well. So if you are sitting down somewhere, the first thing you get served, in addition to maybe some tap water, is going to be sanitizers, where you can quickly clear all your hands before you actually sit down and start eating your meal. So it's going to be quite an interesting environment to see. Before we finish this, I just wanted to check if there are any final comments that you would want to make on this.
No, I think you've captured that. I think it's going to be important from a sort of, you know, in venue experience, but not just for staff and sort of the layout, but also menus. So I think there's a lot of thought that may need to be put into menu choices, and actually format of menus as well. I think down to the detail of whether it's disposable or not, as well. So I think plus whether it's better to have tablet-based menus. So I think it's going to be very interesting picture to look at.
Absolutely. There are a few questions. We are running a little bit out of time, but we will go through these questions if you are able to stay on the line for a little bit longer. So we have a question about QSR. So are we seeing a shift from dine-in towards takeaway and drive-through? This is absolutely country-based. So many countries are not yet in a place where actually you can go in anyway. And for the ones where there is a shift towards more and more quick takeaway, right? Just dropping in, having a queue actually in the front, ordering in advance, and then taking it and going, walking away with it. But this is something that we can discuss separately on a country by country basis, because while that is a major trend in some states in the US, it's not necessarily something we are seeing across Europe, for example. And a quick question about the bees and the UK and the demographics of that, for those of you who we haven't had a chance to work together yet. So the bees we have about 3.5 million bees in total globally. The question is about the UK. So more than 200,000 of them are active in the UK, who are contributing about their lives on a daily basis. And in terms of the regional mix and demographics, it's nationally representative. So we have all the age groups covered in a representative way, and demographically from regions perspective as well, it will be nationally representative, so that we have enough people from all the different regions within the UK as well. And there's one final question: if we are seeing differences from one country to another, especially US. Well, absolutely. Not only we do major differences, this was a quick global analysis, and we see major differences from country to country. First of all, they are in different periods. Some countries are way out of lockdown, like Germany, where we are seeing the return to be much faster. Excuse me. And then in some countries which are like just getting out, like UK, it's different. With the US, however, it's a pretty much state game, you know, state by state. Even in some cases like, you know, Louisiana or San Francisco, Seattle, New York, they are behaving very differently compared to even the state they are in. So for the US, it is very important to analyze the data at state and where possible at the city level, not to make big assumptions about people's reactions. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. And if you have any follow-up questions, please just drop it in the question function here. We will definitely get back to you on those questions. And this is a series of webinars, as some of you know, that we are running. Every week we pick up a different sector. This week we just wanted to start from the mood and also look at return to life in terms of eating out. Our focus was primarily on QSR and fast food, and we will be doing that for each sector as we continue to be able to see how the return to life is shaping up as we are re-entering the public life. Thank you so much for your attention and have a lovely week.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.